You need to stop eating carbs if you want to lose weight. And in this video, I'm going to share exactly why. Or at least I'll explain why that is what some people want you to believe.
If someone wanted to lose weight quickly, safely, drastically, what would they severely eliminate? The carbs. Someone wanted to conquer cancer, what would they quite drastically drop? The carbs. Someone wanted to conquer their diabetes, what would they drop? The carbs.
Carbs have been demonized for years, and because of this, you might think that bread or pasta are the one thing standing between you and your fat loss goals. But the low-carb fanatics are choosing to ignore a huge part of the picture when it comes down to how carbs actually function within your body and their impact on your weight. And I'm telling you this not only as a registered dietitian, but also as someone who followed a low-carb diet for an entire year, gained 15 to 20 pounds during that time, and went back to eating over 250 grams of carbs every single day. And now with carbs in my diet, I'm in the best shape of my life as a 36-year-old dad. So if you want to find out my simple, practical tips that will let you eat carbs while still dropping fat easily, even if you're someone who feels like you can't even look at bread without gaining weight, make sure you keep watching. Hey everyone, what is going on? In this week, our video, it's all about carbs and weight loss and how to reach your goals without having to cut them out or cutting anything out of your diet, really. But first, let me give you a quick introduction. If you're new here, my name is Andres Ayesta. I'm a registered dietitian for over 12 years, and I work with guys mostly over the age of 30, and I help them gain muscle and drop fat without cutting out carbs, fasting, biohacking methods, or all kinds of nonsense. I mainly work with dads because as a dad myself, I understand the struggles that come with staying fit during the stage of your life. So if that sounds like you and you're not subscribed yet, make sure you hit the button below and also tap the little bell icon to get notified when my new videos go live every single week, usually on Wednesdays. Now let's get into this week's topic, which is all about carbs and how they function within your body and how to eat them strategically to actually hit your goals. To start off, I'm going to give you a little Carbs 101 crash course so you understand the different types of carbs and the roles that they play in your nutrition, because carbs are not all created equal. The carbohydrates are the body's main source of energy and come in the form of sugar, starches, and dietary fiber. All carbohydrates except for fiber are broken down into glucose, and they provide the body with 4 calories of energy per gram. So this is an example. If you eat something that has 100 grams of carbs, that means that you're gonna get 400 calories. Simple. So let's take a closer look at the 3 types of carbs, because this is something that is often ignored by nutrition influencers who are telling you that you should cut out all carbs. First, we have simple carbs. The first type of carbs that I mentioned is sugars, which are also known as simple carbohydrates. These are the smallest units of carbs and are quickly absorbed by the body for energy. This category includes glucose, which you can think of as the basic building blocks of carbs, fructose in fruit, lactose in dairy, and sucrose, which is table sugar. Also, certain foods that are considered technically starches but are deprived of fiber sometimes can be considered a bit of a simple carb, but we'll get into that. Next, we have starches, which are also known as complex carbohydrates. These are going to be larger molecules that are made up of multiple sugar units or multiple glucose units. They take longer to digest and give you more of a steady energy over time. You can find them in things like starchy vegetables, potatoes, corn, and squash. Also things like whole grains like quinoa, oats, brown rice, legumes, lentils, chickpeas, and things like that. And finally, we have fiber, which is the part of plant foods that your body cannot really digest. Instead, fiber supports gut health, regulates your digestion, and helps you maintain steady blood sugar levels. I'm gonna come back to fiber a little bit later in the video because it's honestly very important to address, but for now, I'll just mention that it comes in 2 forms, soluble fiber and insoluble fiber, and you can find it in things like fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and whole grains for the most part. There's also another way that we can categorize carbs that's important to understand, and that is refined versus unrefined. Let's take a look at refined carbs first. Refined carbs are simple carbohydrates because the fiber that they contain naturally has been removed or altered. These foods are typically going to be lower in nutrients unless they've had some added back in through fortification, and many of these foods typically provide calories without being very satiating, so it's easy to overconsume them. This includes foods like white rice, white bread, baked goods with white flour, for example, and things like that. And then we have unrefined carbohydrates, which haven't been altered from their original state by removing the fiber, so they're a little bit more filling and nutrient dense. Unrefined sugars are found in fruit and milk, and unrefined grains include things like brown rice, quinoa, rolled oats. So even though fruit and milk are both considered simple carbs, they also provide fiber, vitamins, and minerals, so they're great options to include in your diet. Now, carbs are your body's main source of energy. They fuel everything from your physical activity to brain function. They boost your mood by aiding serotonin production, improve exercise performance, and are also important for hormone and metabolic health. Now, some people will argue that carbohydrates are not necessary, and there's a lot of things that I'm going to talk about a little bit later on, and your body can use like ketones and all these different things like that, and carbs are not essential, but most bodies are designed to use carbohydrates effectively. So with all these benefits, you may be wondering where this carbs are bad mentality came to be so widespread. So let's talk about how carbs got their bad reputation. The myth that carbs are bad and lead to weight gain comes from a combination of diet trends, misinformation, and the oversimplification of nutrition science. There's 4 key reasons why I personally believe that this idea became so popular. So let's take a look at them. First, the rise of low-carb diets, and this goes back to the 1970s. The Atkins diet popularized the idea that cutting carbs would help you lose weight. More recently, you probably heard about the ketogenic diet, which further reinforced why carbs are bad for weight loss mentality. Now, when these diets worked for some people and had rapid results, it was an easy jump to just simply start to blame carbs for being the problem in weight gain or the lack of weight loss. The second piece is I think it's simplified weight loss messaging. The narrative that cutting carbs equals weight loss became a simple, easy to follow concept for marketing diets. The problem with this black or white approach and the use of really strict rules is that it really ignores the importance of balanced nutrition and the differences between types of carbohydrates, which brings me to the next reason that carbs are demonized, and that is the misconception of all carbs are the same. Now, the low-carb diet advocates and zealots that completely ignore the fact that not all carbs are created equal and continue to think of all of them as the same. Highly processed and refined carbohydrates like white breads and sugary snacks and sodas can definitely have negative impacts on our health. But grouping all carbs together have made so many people believe that even healthy options like fruits and whole grains were actually harmful. And finally, it seems like everyone is talking about blood sugar spikes on social media these days. The rise in insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes linked to diets high in refined carbohydrates has made some people really fearful of all carbs in general, even though complex carbs have a very different impact on blood sugar, which I'm going to come back to in a few minutes. Now, one argument you might be hearing from people promoting low-carb diets is that we don't actually need carbohydrates. Take a look at this video.
There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate.
Right. That's something to be said repeatedly, because that's really kind of shocking.
It is. We have, a daily requirement for certain essential fats, certain, fatty acids like omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. Protein is massively important.
Yep.
There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate, which isn't to say that you shouldn't eat them.
Right. But it's very strange. That's not essential.
Correct.
Now, while it is true that the body can survive without carbs by relying on fats and proteins for energy, that doesn't mean that this is the most optimal diet. The myth that carbs are bad has stuck around because of its appeal as a quick fix solution, but science shows that carbs are beneficial for energy, health, and long-term weight management when consumed in a balanced way and from quality sources. So with that said, why do low-carb diets seem to work for some people? Well, it really comes down to the basic principle of energy balance. Yes, I'm talking about that again. If you've heard me talk about this, I speak about the calorie balance equation ad nauseum. If you eat fewer calories than your body burns over a period of time, you will lose weight, regardless of the specific dietary pattern that you're following. This is known as a calorie deficit. Low-carb diets can be effective for some people because they cut out a lot of highly processed calorie-dense foods like sugary snacks and refined grains. And if you're someone who was eating a lot of this crap, baked goods and candy, and then suddenly you put all those foods in the off limits on your low-carb diet, it's not surprising that it would result in weight loss. I'm not just saying this. Research proves it over and over. When calories are controlled, when you look at low-carb diets and low-fat diets, which tend to be higher in carbs by default, and their calories are equated, which means both groups, when you look at them and they're dieting and they're both following the same amount of calories altogether, there are no significant differences between them. And despite there are some meta-analysis that I'm putting on screen favoring low-carb diets producing bigger rates of weight loss, it's also important to address the adherence of these diets long-term. Also, just because weight loss occurs does not mean that fat loss occurs. In this meta-analysis, for example, even though greater weight loss was seen in the low-carb studies, fat mass loss was not different between the groups, which brings up a good point, and that is that I've also noticed that the initial rapid weight loss that many of these people on low-carb diets experience comes from water, and that water weight can be very motivating for many people on low-carb diets. Glycogen, which is the stored form of carbohydrates, is in the muscles and your liver and also carries a lot of water with it. So when these stores are depleted, you'll often see a massive drop in your weight on the scale, even though this isn't actually fat. So it is possible to see short-term results from cutting carbs, and it can be a strategy, but it's rarely something that I recommend, particularly for busy dudes, and that's like myself and the people that I work with. Here's why I don't recommend low carb diets for most people in general. While low carb diets might seem like a shortcut, they can be really hard to stick with parents for managing busy schedules and family meals. Restricting carbs often means missing out on easy, healthy staples like whole grain pastas, rice, and fruit, which are not only convenient, but also give you energy to work out, to think, to chase around your kids. Plus, overly restrictive eating can also lead to burnout, low energy, and a bunch of uncontrollable cravings. I found that for many people, overly restricted diets like low carb create an unhealthy relationship with food, not only for yourself, but also because your kids are watching you, and a lot of unnecessary stress that comes along the way, fear and guilt around what you're actually eating. Now, I'm not saying that low carb might not work for you, and I've always encouraged personal experimentation when it comes down to diets, but after coaching hundreds of clients, I've found that weight loss is easier and a lot more enjoyable with a more balanced approach that doesn't make you feel like you're missing out at the dinner table. But with that said, I want to get into 4 key strategies that I think are going to allow you to eat carbs and still lose weight. So you want to make sure you take note of this and pay close attention. So here's the question: how do I eat carbs and lose weight, coach? Here we go. First, you got to understand the importance of energy balance. As I mentioned before, the most important factor when it comes down to weight loss is energy balance. You need to be in a calorie deficit for weight loss to happen. That the easiest way that I've found to make sure you're eating the right amount of calories for fat loss with a macronutrient balance that supports performance and overall health is through tracking macronutrients, or at least creating calorie and macronutrient awareness. I have a number of videos in my channel where I talk about this in depth, so I'm going to link a couple of them in the description. The second piece is you have to prioritize fiber. I mentioned fiber before, but it's worth bringing up again in here because both soluble and insoluble fiber have benefits for your gut health, but soluble fiber in particular is extremely helpful when you're trying to lose weight. When soluble fiber dissolves in the gut, it forms a gel that slows your digestion and helps you stay fuller for longer. Along with that, it's also a natural appetite suppressant, increasing levels of hormones that make you feel fuller and reducing levels of the hunger hormone ghrelin. Who would think that that could be like your natural way of getting Ozempic, right? Each day, you want to aim for about 25 to 38 grams of fiber. There are specific foods that can give you a fiber boost, like oats, beans, sweet potatoes, broccoli, apples, carrots, flax seeds, sunflower seeds, nectarines, and a bunch of other things. Third, we need to aim for blood sugar balance. One of the main reasons why blood sugars can have a negative impact on our health is how they affect our blood sugar. As I said before, this is one of the reasons many people will tell you to avoid carbs completely, but what really matters is the type of carbs that we're choosing. When we eat foods that are higher in refined carbs, they're going to be quickly broken down into glucose, and they will go into your bloodstream very, very quickly. This causes a very rapid spike in your blood sugar levels, causing the body to release insulin to bring your blood sugar back down. Now, what's going to happen is it comes down very quickly, so you have this big spikes or like this big peaks and valleys that are going to also affect your energy levels. And over time, consistently consuming refined carbs can start to lead to insulin resistance, where the body cells become less responsive to insulin. This can contribute to weight gain and an increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes and a bunch of other issues. Now, on top of that, blood sugar spikes and crashes can trigger cravings for more sugary and carb-heavy foods. So this is why we want to avoid this like massive, like big peaks and valleys and spikes as much as possible. How do we make that happen? Well, there are 2 priorities. First is choosing unrefined, higher fiber carbs most of the time. Think about 80-20. 80% of the carbs that you consume should come from the sources. And second, pairing all carbs with sources of protein and healthy fats to slow down the absorption of glucose into your bloodstream. And the fourth and last recommendation I'm going to give you is you need to be strategic about the carbs that you consume. Just because I'm suggesting that you don't cut out carbs doesn't necessarily mean that I want you to be strategic about how you consume them. A diet that includes carbs does not mean a carb only or high carb diet. In general, when you're trying to lose weight, I recommend following what I like to call a high protein, moderate carb, lower fat type of approach. Then you can decide where you want to get your carbs from and how you want to time them throughout the day in a way that supports your goals and your lifestyle. For example, I often choose to put sugar-free syrup on my pancakes. Even though pancakes have carbs, I much rather get more of my carbs from whole food sources rather than having the simple carbs coming from maple syrup. Along with that, I also time some of my carb intake to fall around my workout, so I'll often add in some simple carbs to fuel my training and to replenish my glycogen before or after my workouts, depending on what I'm doing and the time that I'm doing it. Carbs are not something to be feared, my friends. They're just something to be managed. And I hope that this video gave you a better idea on how you can put that into action in your own diet. But that brings us to the end of today's video. Now, before I finish things off in here today, guys, I want to mention that if you're a dad who is ready to take control of your health and get the fit, strong body that you've always wanted without falling into the traps of these fad diets that are telling you to go low carb and to cut out all the things that you love and enjoy, I want to share something that I think could be a really, really game changer for you. I want to give you an invitation to watch my free Fit Dads webinar, where I'm going to be walking you through the step process on how I actually teach my clients how to shed fat and keep it off long term without sacrificing your favorite foods and the things that you enjoy. Just head down to the description below, click the link, and sign up for that webinar for free. Now, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of the new ones that come out every single week. But that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much again for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.